We're back on the record in the presence of the jury. Mr. Bahena and the attorneys of record are all present. Mr. Romero, Ms. Romero, I'll remind you, you're still under oath. And with that, Ms. Fries, you may cross-examine.
Ms. Romero, you said that Mr. Bahena made a statement that kind of gestured a slitting of a throat. Is that correct?
My mistake, it was not the slitting of the throat, was just more of a sign. Like he went like this through to the neck.
All right. And so what did you understand him to mean when he did that?
I was asking him if where there was blood, either head, forehead, and I myself went head, forehead, which he said neck, and he went like this.
So my client specifically said that there was blood on her neck. Is that right?
That is what I understood from him, yes.
And from what you understood was that her neck was bleeding. Is that correct?
No, at the time he just said that there was blood in the neck, and that's how I took it.
You understand that her injuries are not consistent with that.
I was not aware of the injuries.
You don't know anything about the injuries in this case, is that right?
I know what the information that they have given me, yes, but not any details or anything in particularly.
That would be a different area for someone else to testify to, is that right?
That is correct.
Someone that has expertise in what her injuries were, is that correct?
Yes.
But from what Mr. Bahena said is that there was blood specifically on her neck, is that right?
When I asked him again, was there blood in the head, forehead? He's pointed to his neck like this, and he said in the neck.
And when he pointed to his neck, he had his thumb and his forefinger around his neck as if someone was being strangled?
Again, he just said that. I did not think of cut, strangle, or anything like that. I just was trying to understand where he saw the blood.
You've pressed my client many times for more details, is that right?
Yes.
You told him several times that you didn't believe that he didn't remember these details, is that right?
I did not tell him that I did not believe him. I told him that I understood if he had that condition. I even remember saying that that could be a condition when someone blacked out. But no, I do not recall saying that.
But as far as what exactly happened, whether a knife was used or some sort of an object, you just don't know. Is that right?
That is right.
And that's because my client did not give you that information. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, he did lead you to the body. Is that right?
Yes, he did.
And what he did is he said, this is where this happened. Is that right?
He showed me the cornfield, and he goes, this is the cornfield where I came, took her out of the trunk, carried her on my shoulder, went inside the cornfield, dropped her on the ground, covered her with leaves, and I left right away.
Now, you were very clear to him that you wanted more information. Is that right?
In the car, yes, when I was doing the interview, I wanted more details. I was trying to have him remember what happened between the time that he stated that he did not remember how she got in the car, but he remembered when he took her out of the car.
Now, he wouldn't provide you with those details. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And specifically, when he asked or when you were pressed for details, he said, I brought you here, right?
He kept restating that, yes, I brought you here, didn't I brought you here, didn't I?
And another thing that he said to you is, what changes? Is that right?
Yes.
He knew at that. Many hours before, he was detained on an immigration hold. Isn't that right?
He was detained around 11:30 p.m. at night.
And when he was talking to you at this cornfield, that was approximately 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. Isn't that right?
We left the office at 4:30 a.m.
And he knew once you were there that he was going to be arrested for her homicide. Isn't that right?
At that time, when the 11:30 interview with the ICE agent, at that time he was under custody.
And specifically, though, ma'am, between 5 and 6 in the morning, when you were at that cornfield, he has brought you to the body. He's led you in the cornfield, isn't that right?
That is right.
And he knew that he was going to be placed under arrest for her homicide, isn't that right?
What he was thinking, I'm not sure what his thoughts were.
Well, he had no reason to believe that he wasn't going to be held accountable, isn't that right?
I guess not.
And you asked him for more details,
Yes.
right? And he was simply unwilling to give them to you. Is that correct?
Again, I will not say the word unwillingly. He kept stating that when he got angry, he blacks out. So I'm not sure if he was not willing to do it or he was just describing a condition that he had. Again, it's not my area.
Now, you're trained in interview techniques, is that right?
I received, like I stated earlier, 16 hours of the CTK class.
Have you ever heard of the term false confession?
It was brought in one of the classes of the training, yes.
Explain for the jury what a false confession is.
Sorry, but I will not be able to do that because I do not have the knowledge of what it is exactly.
Explain what you were trained at the interview technique schools that you were at.
I do not remember going into details with the false confession. My training was direct in how to direct an interview, how to do rapport building, how to go ahead and get to know the person that you're interviewing, how to conduct the interview and manage like that.
Now, ma'am, you have some very reputable skills that I would assume, given your dual language, is that you did interviews quite a lot in your capacity as a law enforcement officer. Is that right?
It all depends what you mean quite a lot. I started my career with law enforcement, and I was doing this for 2.5 years almost at the time. So I was still brand new to all of it. And I was, yes, conducting interviews in a small town of West Liberty, which there were not a lot of interviews to be done. It all depends what a lot means to you.
It's generally known, it was generally known in the community that you were a native Spanish speaker, isn't that right?
That is correct, yes.
And so if there was someone that was investigating a case involving someone that spoke Spanish, they would often bring you in to assist, isn't that right?
Yes.
And have you ever been asked to assist in another jurisdiction such as this case?
No.
All right. Now, ma'am, I want to talk to you a little bit about report building. That's something that you've learned at the
Yes.
academy?
Yes, a little bit of it in the academy, but again, the report building skills that I learned were mostly at the CTK classes.
And specifically, what is rapport building?
Again, just getting to know the person that you're talking to, anything about family, history, employment, anything that we can go ahead and get out of the a specific person.
And it sounds to me like you talked to my client for about 2 hours just doing general rapport building.
Again, I do not recall the exact times, but yes, the interview was long.
You did speak to him about a number of different things, is that right?
That is right. We spoke about family. He gave me a list of uncles and aunts.
You talked to him about his employment and where he
Yes.
worked, is that right?
Yes, that is right.
You also talked to him about how often he worked, is that correct?
Yes.
And he talked to you, and ma'am, I do have your not your transcripts, but the transcripts here if you'd like to look at them. But he talked to you about how often he worked at the dairy farm, is that right?
Yes, he did.
He told you that he worked long hours, is that right?
7 days a week, yes. 5 to 5 sometimes.
All All right. And so he goes into work at 5 o'clock in the morning. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's what he told me.
And then he would leave work at 5 p.m. Is that right?
Yes, he said the 12-hour shift.
And he would work 7 days a week on his on week. Is that right?
Yes, he told me that there were some every other weekend or something like that he was off.
So generally, there would be 1 week that he would work every single day, 12-hour days. Is that right?
That was my understanding when I spoke to him.
And then the next week, he would have 2 days off. Is that right?
He said every other weekend, so yes, that's what I understand.
And that second week, so he'd work 5 of the 7 days. Is that right?
I did not ask what week he was on at that particular time, so I'm not sure.
Well, let me ask a better question for you. Generally, if it was a 2-week period, he would work 12 of the 14 days. Is that right?
Yes.
And so I understand you don't know about what days were off, but he would work he would work 12 hours a day, 12 of the 14 days a week. Is that right?
Again, he told me he went in at 5 a.m., come out at 5 p.m.
And you didn't have anything to dispute that. Is that right?
No?
He talked to you about his family in the area. Is that right?
Yes.
You were able to connect to him that you both immigrated here to the United States. Is that right?
Yes.
You told him that you immigrated here when you were 10, right?
Yes.
And he said that he came to the United States when he was about 17.
Yes, if I recall correctly, yes.
Did he tell you the area or the township that he was from?
Yes, he did.
Where was he from?
I do not recall the name of the town, but he was from the south part of Mexico. The state, I believe it was Guerrero.
That's what I thought was the town, so it sounds like you're following this better than me. Did you ask him about his parents and if they're still alive?
Yes, I did.
And did he tell you where they were?
They said that they were both in Mexico.
So they were still in Mexico in Guerrero, is that right?
Yes.
Did you ask him about if he had any siblings?
Yes, I did.
And did he tell you about his family?
Yes, he did.
And what family did he have other than his parents in Mexico?
He, well, in Mexico, I do not recall anymore besides the parents, but I believe he mentioned a brother or sister. But we mostly focused on the family that he had here and around the area.
All right. And my notes, and I don't think I want to make you go through the interview here, but it is that he had 2 siblings, but your understanding is he had a sibling or 2 that were still with his parents. Is that right?
That was my understanding, yes.
He also told you that he's building a house in Mexico. Is that right?
Yes, he did.
And how is it that one works in Iowa, 12 out of 14 days of a week and still is doing that in Mexico?
Again, everybody, I don't know how he is doing it. The things that I know is that that's what a lot of immigrants do. That is what my parents did. We came here for a better life, and we were building a house, meaning that someone does the construction work while you send money to them.
And it's not unusual for someone that is an immigrant in this country to still be sending money home to their family. Is that right?
That is right.
And is it unusual for a family to be separated where, part of the family immigrates to the country and the other part of the family stays there?
That's not unusual.
Why would a family do that?
Because of their immigration status?
Now, with Christian, him sending money back to his family to take care of his family, is that something that's unusual?
No.
Now, the money that someone can make in the United States versus in Mexico, is that significant?
I will say so. To be honest, I came here when I was 10, so I do not have any knowledge of how much money you can go ahead and make in Mexico.
All right. But he told you that he was working here so that he could send money back to his family. Is that right?
That is what he said.
He also talked to you about what he did on his time off, his 2 days out of those 14 days. Is that right?
Yes.
He said that he had a young daughter, a 3-year-old, is that right?
Yes.
Her name was Paulina.
I do not recall the name.
Right. Did he tell you that he spent time with this child?
Yes, he stated that he drove down to the Cedar Rapids area where she was living with the mother, and that he used to bring her over to Brooklyn.
So his daughter would stay with him, you know, those 2 days out of the every 14 days. Is that right?
He stated I will go and get her during the weekends that I'm off.
All right. Now, my client also talked about his family that is in the Iowa area. Is that right?
Yes.
And specifically, he told you that he chose the location that he did because he had uncles in the area. Is that right?
Yes.
He told you that he had uncles in Tama County. Is that right?
Yes.
I think he said he had 4 different uncles in Tama.
I do not recall the number, but yes, there were quite a few.
He also told you that he had a family in Brooklyn. Is that right?
Yes.
It sounds to me like he had some aunts that would take care of him and kind of cook food for him when he had a lunch. Is that right?
That is right. He stated that the uncle's wife was the one who prepared his food.
He also showed you a picture of his daughter. Is that right?
No, I do not recall that.
You don't recall him showing you a picture of his daughter?
No, I do not remember that part.
If I showed you a copy of your transcript, would that assist with that?
Yes.
All right. May I approach?
You may.
If you could turn to, and this is 170434. If you could turn to page 10. This is yours. Now, ma'am, this was over an 11-hour. This was over an 11-hour interview. Is that right?
That is correct.
And I'm not expecting you to remember every single detail. But it does say that it does show that you asked to see a picture of his daughter. Is that right?
I'm not seeing where I asked him to show me the picture. I was asking him for the cell phone number.
Okay.
And right now, when you see my cell phone, I have in the background my own baby. And that is what I saw in his cell phone. He did not show me the picture like this, and when this is my daughter, it was just in the background of the cell phone. And I asked, "Is that your daughter?" He said, "Yes."
All right, that makes sense. So because it talks, and I don't have it right in front of me, I can bring it up, but there's some sort of a statement that you say, "Oh, that's your daughter?" Is that right?
Yes.
And then you say, "Oh, she's cute." Is that right?
Yes.
So you didn't ask to see a picture of his daughter. Is that right?
No, I remember I did not even recall saying, "Hey, show me the picture of your daughter," or him going like this. It was in the background of that cell phone.
It's just that you happened to see it when he was looking at his cell phone. Is that right?
Yes, because my pen was not working correctly, and he actually let me borrow a pen.
All right. So after the rapport building that happens, and we talked about some of the things you talked about, but you got to know him fairly significantly. Is that right?
Yes, I believe that we spent time talking.
The next thing, you did talk to him some about his status. Is that right?
Yes.
And we already talked about he came to Mexico when he was 17. Is that right?
Yes.
You talked to him about how it is that he's able to, I guess, function, in the United States without a legal status. Is that right?
Yes.
And my client didn't make any sort of statements or try to represent to you that he was legally in this country. Is that right?
No.
He was very upfront with you that he was here illegally. Is that right?
Yes.
He was brought here when he was 17, and he's just remained. Is that correct?
He told me that he had been in the United States for 7 years and 4 in Brooklyn.
One thing that you were very clear to him on the outset is that you were not here to investigate his immigration status. Is that right?
I do remember telling him a couple of times that I was not interested in his status.
And so specifically, you said you were worried about this girl's disappearance. You were not the immigration police. Is that right?
At one point I did mention that, but not at the beginning of the interview.
Well, why don't you look at page 26 now?
Is there a particular part?
There's no lines there, so I think you're going to have to read the entire page.
Mr. Rivera says, well, when you apply, so you don't struggle. So I said, so you don't struggle, but oh, you have registered at work. Mr. Rivera answers, yes, at work.
I'm not asking you to read it out loud. If you could just look at it yourself,
Okay,
I'd appreciate
sorry.
it.
So yes.
And you were very clear with him that you were not here to investigate his immigration status. Is that right?
Yes.
And he was very clear to you that he was in this country illegally. Is that correct?
He told me that he was using another name and social security number.
And specifically that he was working under the name of John Budd. Is that right?
Yes.
He talked to you about using that name. Is that right?
Yes.
He said that he has no credit cards, debit cards, or anything like that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Basically, he uses that name so that he is able to work.
Yes.
And then he cashes the check and operates with cash. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what he told me.
Now, the statement that you had about immigration, that you were not here to arrest him for immigration, you genuinely believed that at that time. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, there were people that were not in the interview room that were making the big picture decisions on the case. Is that right?
Yes.
How many other people were there working on that case from the FBI, DCI, any sort of law enforcement agency?
I'm not able to tell you that. I don't know.
From what you saw, were there more than 10 people?
No, that I remember. I mean, I do remember like 4 or 5 of them.
Well, you are aware that when my client was brought into custody, that his vehicle was also being processed. Is that right?
At the beginning of the interview, I was not aware of that.
You were made aware of that at a certain time. Is that right?
That is right.
And specifically, you were told at that point in time that there had been hair that was found in Mr. Rivera's vehicle. Isn't that right?
Later on in the interview, yes.
And explain to me, who told you that there was hair that was found in the vehicle?
I do not recall who told me that. I was going outside for breaks. I was gathering information, and I was going back then to conduct the interview.
Well, at that time, you were made aware that my client's vehicle was being searched and was being processed by the Division of Criminal Investigation. Is that right?
Again, I'm not sure who was investigating the vehicle. I was aware that the vehicle was being investigated, but not sure who it was.
And I'm not asking you when, but at some point in time during that night, you became aware that simultaneously, as my client's being interviewed, his vehicle is also being processed. Is that right?
That is right, yes.
And one of the things that you were told was that there was hair that was found in that vehicle. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it was believed that that hair may be from Mollie Tibbetts. Isn't that right?
I do not recall telling him that it was from Mollie Tibbetts. I believe I told him that there was hair found with the information that I got from the outside, but I did not mention Mollie Tibbetts.
You went in and you confronted my client saying that there was hair found in the vehicle. Is that right?
I informed Mr. Rivera they were telling me that there was hair found in the vehicle.
And you essentially were saying, hey, explain this. Is that right?
Yes, which he stated that it was hair from his daughter.
You later found out that the statement or what you were told was not true. Is that right?
Later on, again, I do not recall that.
All right. So
I did not. People were not there telling me, yes, this is true, this is not true. Was given the information, going in there, conducting the interview.
Right. So it would be for this jury to listen to the evidence and to find out if hair was actually found in the vehicle. Is that right?
That is someone else's part to explain.
But one of the things that you confronted him with is that there was hair in his vehicle. Is that right?
I informed Mr. Rivera that there was hair.
And as far as the immigration, what you told him, it turned out to be a lie. Is that right?
No, it wasn't a lie. I was not there for immigration status. I was not there to ask him about his status at all. I was there, again, to conduct an interview, and that's what I did.
One of the tactics you were taught to use is to present a suspect with information that ties them to the crime. Isn't that right?
Yes.
And sometimes investigators use false information to present to a suspect. Isn't that right?
Yes.
And the information that you told him that you were not worried about his immigration status, that changed at 11:30 p.m. Isn't that right?
That did not change because I was not interested in his immigration status.
Well, at about 11:30 p.m., he was placed in custody
Correct.
for immigration.
By
Isn't that right?
ICE agents, correct.
Okay, so a break was taken in the interview, and he was put in custody for being illegally in the United States. Is that right?
That's what I understood at 11:30, yes.
My client had just gotten off of work or was finishing the day at work when he was brought in. Isn't that right?
I'm not sure. I was not given that information.
Well, that's what he told you.
He told me that he was at work when they went to talk to him.
And the interview started at about 5 o'clock p.m.
Approximately 17:06.
And 17:06 would be 5:06
5:06
p.m.
p.m.
So that would be approximately the end of his day at the dairy farm. Is that right?
With the information that he gave me, yes.
And that interview continued through the night. Isn't that right?
Yes.
So he was given breaks, but he was essentially in a small room at the sheriff's office from 5 p.m. at night until 4:30 the next morning. Is that right?
Yes, that was an 11-hour interview with approximately 8 to 9 breaks that he was given. He was given food. He was given breaks to use the restroom. He was given number of breaks to just be by himself. Yes.
His family came and asked to talk to him. Isn't that right?
I'm not sure what the family asked. I was told that there was family out in the lobby, and I went outside to talk to them.
So you talked to his family. Were you able to get their names?
No, I was not.
There were 2 people there. Is that right?
I recall seeing 3 of them there.
When you talked to them, you suggested that they go home.
I told them that I wasn't aware of how long this was going to go ahead and go for, that it was late, that if they wanted to go home, that they could.
Did you ever offer them a chance to speak with my client?
No, I did not.
Did you ever tell my client that his family was there to speak with him?
Not to speak to him. I made Mr. Rivera aware that he had family out in the lobby.
You made him aware that he had family out in the lobby.
Yes.
If my client says that you never made him aware that he had family out in the lobby, you disagree with that?
It was recorded, so it will go ahead and be in the transcripts.
All right, so you believe that it's in these transcripts somewhere?
Somewhere, yes.
All right. Did you offer him a chance to go speak with his family?
No.
You just told him that they were there?
At the beginning of the interview, I told him he had his cell phone with him. I told him he was free to go whenever he wanted to. He continued to stay. He continued to talk to me.
At some point in the interview, you talked to my client several times about helping himself. You recall that?
The word help, it's translated in a different concept in Spanish, so I'm not sure what you are referring to when I said help.
And so you believe that the transcript is wrong, is what you're saying, or?
I'm not saying that it's wrong, but in my opinion, there are parts that me being a fluent Spanish speaker, I will say that they're not translated the correct way, but that is just my opinion.
May I approach? Ma'am, these transcripts, first of all, they've been authored by the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, is that right?
Yeah, that's what I was told, yes.
So that's their translation, is that right?
That's what I was told, yes.
And what you're saying is that their translation is not what you believe the translation is?
In my opinion, again, there are parts in the transcripts that I believe were not translated the correct way and the reason why I'm saying this is by looking at the video and reading what they translated.
Would it be fair to say that there's different dialects of Spanish?
Yes.
Explain that for the jury.
There are different words that you can go ahead and use to describe something. Like there are parts of Mexico that when you say cookie, it could, for others, it might be like slapping someone in the face. So it's different words that describe different things. It's just hard to explain.
And so my client, he's from Guerrero, Mexico, is that right?
Guerrero, Mexico, yes.
You say it much better than me. Where are you from in Mexico?
I'm from the north side. I'm Durango.
What is, as far as dialects, can you give this jury any information on different dialects?
Not really, but I do understand that there is different forms that we talk. Just like anywhere in the United States, if you are from the north, if you're from the south, it can go ahead and have different accents, different dialects, and that is the same way that has happened in Mexico.
And for example, using the term hey, or hello, are there different ways to say that depending on where you are from?
Yes. It will be like saying soda or pop. I mean, in the United States, it's just different.
All right, so let's go to page 11 first, and I'll give you a little bit of direction.
What number of the transcript?
It is 2027-35. And it's about towards the middle, and I don't want you to read it to me, but let me know when you've had a chance to read the phrase. I think you use help 2 different times. Have you seen it?
Yes.
And what you say is, you can help me understand so you can help yourself.
Yes.
And at that point, you're I guess, suggesting that you are able to help my client. Isn't that right?
No, that's not the way that I see it. When I said help me understand in Spanish, it will be ayúdame a comprender. Help me understand what you're trying to say. It's like talking to a kid in school. Help me, guide me to what you are saying. So that is the meaning of the word help in there.
And you use that phrase multiple different times. You know, you say, let's help each other out. We're here to help each other out. You agree with me on that, is that right?
That is correct.
Another thing you say, and I mean, I can go through the different transcript places, but you're telling me that we're here to help you out. That's another phrase that you used several times, ma'am. You recall that?
Yes.
And at that point, you say, we're here to help you out.
Yes.
Aren't you telling my client that you're there to help him?
Basically, what I'm saying with what I mean with that is I am here to hear you out, to see what you have to say.
You say that you're telling him that, but that's not what you said. Is that right?
Again, it's just difficult to explain in Spanish because when you say it in Spanish is, I'm going to go ahead and talk Spanish, but it's just ayúdame a entenderte, ayúdame a comprender. So, okay, yes, but I'm going to go ahead and translate what I said. So help me understand, help me. Again, I was trying to get the information that he needed to tell me.
Okay, so it'd be fair to say that these transcripts, you don't agree with everything that is said in here. Is that right?
Again, it's not that I don't agree, it's just that in my opinion, because I believe, again, different dialect, different words being used, it's just not the way that I will translate it myself.
Would you agree with me that if you were to translate it yourself, it would probably be about 10% inaccurate?
I will not say that, but I will be able to understand it better, yes.
All right, you think that you would be able to explain it better, is that right?
That is right.
And someone, and again, it looks like it's transcribed by a Kathy Yanez, but someone has a disagreement with you on how this translation would read. Is that right?
What do you mean by that?
The person taking down this information takes it down differently than you would. Is that right?
Yes.
And that may be different from what my client would. Is that right?
It could be.
Another thing is that he's also being interrogated, and you'd agree with me that this was an interrogation, correct?
I do not agree with you on that.
Okay, well, he was a suspect here, is that right?
I did not make him aware that he was a suspect. I did not have anything to hold him as a suspect at the time of the interview.
How many times have you interviewed a witness for 11 plus hours, ma'am?
That was the first time, yes.
All right, and in this case, he was not only interviewed for 11 plus hours, he was interviewed right after he finished a long day at work. Is that right?
Yes, that was the understanding.
And he's not somebody like you and me that goes and sits at a desk all day, correct?
With the job description that he gave me, he was not.
He's cleaning pens, is that right?
Yes.
He's scooping poop.
Yes.
He's on his feet or some other machinery all day, is that right?
Did not ask him that.
All right.
I'm guessing.
Well, this man, he works a tough job for 12 hours a day, 12 out of the 14 days a week. Isn't that right?
That is what he told me, yes.
And then he's brought in and he is questioned from you on and off for 11 plus hours. Isn't that right?
The interview went for 11 hours, yes.
And it was not until the very end, the last couple of hours, that he was willing to give you really any information. Is that right?
That's not the way that I took it.
Okay. He agreed that he saw her out running. Is that right?
Yes.
But other than that, he did not give you any significant information until the last couple of hours.
He did give me information.
Okay, what information did he give you?
It will be recorded in the transcripts.
Okay, that's fair. This man fell asleep multiple different times during this interview, is that right?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Well, he was given breaks, is that right?
Yes.
And during those breaks, he fell asleep multiple different times.
I was not aware of that.
So you don't believe that my client fell asleep during this interview?
I did not see him fall asleep during the interview.
And you disagree, noticing that he was tired?
I do not disagree with you. At the end of the interview, he looked tired, I looked tired, everyone was tired.
Well, let's turn first to $2027.35. And if you could go to page 15.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, go to page 21. If you could read, it's about 10 lines in. Do you recall, ma'am, and just to be clear, this transcript at 2027:35, that deals with the military timestamp, is that right?
Yes.
So that would have been at 8:35 at night that night, is that correct?
Yes.
So about 3 hours into the interview.
Okay.
And at that point in time, it appears that you're walking back into the room, is that correct?
Yes.
And what is it that you acknowledge to my client?
I said you fell asleep.
And so, do you recall walking back into the room and seeing that he was asleep?
No, I do not recall that. I asked him because I took a little bit to come back.
What does he respond back to you?
He did not admit or anything. He just goes, mm-hmm.
In just a little bit.
Yes.
So you're telling this jury that you agree that you said that, is that right?
Yes.
Or are you saying that it's an inaccurate translation?
No, I'm telling you that I do remember telling him that because I took a long time to come back from that break. And what I'm telling the jury right now is that at the time that I spent with Mr. Rivera, and all of that time, Mr. Rivera did not put his head down, did not act as he was sleeping. When we were in the conversation, he was very engaged. He was answering the questions that I was making, and at no point I saw him sleeping.
All right, let's go to page 22 now, ma'am. It's the same transcript. And if you could read the last portion. And just let me know have you had a chance to look at it, or do you
Yes.
need more time? And just to kind of, I guess, bring you to where you were in the conversation, he's talking to you about a date that he was supposed to have with a woman, is that right?
Yes.
And he did talk to you about that he was supposed to have a date with a woman on July 19th. Is that right?
That is correct.
And you talked about it with him a little bit, that he had even bought the woman flowers. Is that right?
Yes.
He had arranged through his cousin to get flowers because he's working normally during the day. Is that right?
Yes.
He had said that he had cleaned his car so that it was ready for this date. Is that right?
Yes.
He said that he was going to take this woman to Des Moines to go out to eat. Is that right?
Yes.
He said that they had bet on a soccer game or something. Is that right?
That is right.
And he said that he lost, so he was buying. Is that right?
Yes.
And he told you that that date was supposed to be on July 19th of 2018. Is that right?
That is correct.
And what he told you is that that date never happened because the
Tornado.
woman, yes, the
I'm
woman.
sorry. I'm sorry. Both were speaking at the same time. What was the answer? Jeffrey, did I get the answer?
What was the answer you said?
Because of the tornado, he was not able to visit.
This woman, she lived in Marshalltown. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what happened to be is that this tornado in Marshalltown hit the day after Mollie Tibbetts went on this run. Is that right?
I do not recall.
Okay. But he said he was planning to take her on the date, and this tornado hit at the same time. Is that right?
Yes.
So going back to this interview, you're talking about this different date and who bought the flowers and everything. Is that right?
Yes.
And at that point in time, you excused yourself so that he could eat. Is that right?
Yes.
And what is it that he says?
He goes, I am going to sleep here, question mark. So I can start making myself comfortable, right? That was a joking matter. I took it because he chuckled. And I said, no, don't get too comfortable.
All right.
I'll be right back.
And keep moving down the transcript, ma'am.
I told him, no.
You don't need to keep reading it, but go ahead and read it to yourself.
Okay. So where exactly do you want me to go from here?
If you could go to 24, page 24. Okay. And what's shown is that you go back into the room. Is that right?
Yes.
So you gave him a break. Is that correct?
Yes.
And at that point in time, you asked him how he was doing. Is that right?
Yes.
And my client told you that he was sleepy. Is that correct?
Well, I did not ask him. It was Sergeant Jeff that made the question, how are you doing? And he responded, sleepy.
So at that portion of the interview, my client acknowledged that he was tired. Is that correct?
Yes.
If you could go to 220904, that's the next transcript. And so that would be about 10 o'clock at night. And I'm sorry, go to the next transcript. It'd be 2350, so that would be at 11:50 at night. And if you could go to page 2, and it's at the top of the page. So this
Yes.
would be at about 11:50 at night. Is that correct?
Again, I do not remember the exact times.
Well, the transcript would have been, it's labeled that it's 2350:34, correct?
Yes.
So that would correspond with about 11:50, right?
Right.
And at the beginning of that transcript, you ask my client if he's sleepy. Is that right?
Yes, I said, are you sleeping, Christian?
And he says a bit.
Yes, his response was a bit.
Now I'd ask you to go to page 32. In the top of the page.
Yes.
At that point in time, you also asked my client, you say, you are sleepy, right?
Yes.
And he says yes.
And again, shackles.
Now, ma'am, I guess I can show portions of the video if need be that my client's sleeping, but I want to make clear, so are you saying that he was never sleeping when you were in the room, or are you saying that he was never sleeping?
I'm saying that he was never sleeping when I was in the room. He did not make any indicators. Whenever I make the question, as you can see, he shackles, he jokes around with it, and again engages in the conversation with me.
So what you're telling this jury is that he was joking around about being sleepy.
That's how I took it, not particularly joking around, but when you ask me a question, I answer it and I chuckle or laugh. To my interpretation, that will be that I'm not being serious.
So you don't believe that he's sleeping?
Again, he was not sleeping when I was making contact with him.
Ms. Freeze and Mr. Brown, can I have you two approach, please? To the jury, that completes our service for today. I want to remind you of your admonition before I send you on the way. Make sure that you're not discussing the case with anyone. Make sure you're not doing any type of independent research, and make sure you're not having any media exposure to the case. We will start at the same time tomorrow, 8:30, and please leave your notebooks where they are. They'll be collected and then distributed to you tomorrow morning. Have a good evening, and we'll see you back here ready to go at 8:30 tomorrow morning. If you would step out into the hallway, Carrie is going to have a couple questions for you, and then we'll get you on your way, okay? Thank you.